Miami Jewish Federation. This week we deal with the section of the Cheta Egel, the golden calf, which is seen as the ultimate sin of the Jewish people. In fact, it is so grievous that God at one point says, I'm just going to destroy the entire people and make you, Moses, and your offspring into a great nation. Finally, Moses convinces God not to destroy the people, but God says the following, Uvayom pakti ufakadati alechem chatutam, which means, when I make an accounting, I will bring them to account for their sins. Not clear what that verse means, and Rashi explains. Rashi says, at the present moment, I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to refrain from destroying all of the Jewish people at once. However, in the future, throughout the ages, whenever I need to take an accounting for sins in the future, I will punish them to a certain extent for this past sin, meaning for the sin of the golden calf. So Rashi says, based on the Gemara, indeed, no punishment ever comes upon Israel in which there is not at least a part payment for the sin of the golden calf. That shows you how universal this sin is for all of the generations. Now, on the one hand, this means that the punishment for this sin is spread over generations, so the Jewish people are never destroyed. However, how would that actually be fair if the sin of the future generations, they're paying for a sin that they didn't do so many years ago? However, on a deeper level, I think that Rashi is saying the following. Any future sin is partaking of the sin of the golden calf as well, not just the punishment. So therefore, any future sin in some way is representative of that moment of the golden calf. So I think it behooves us today to examine a more fundamental question that I think perplexes many contemporary Jews. I understand that it's a sin, but why is it such a heinous sin that it's sin for all times? So to answer this question, I'd like to start out with a thought experiment. So I want you to imagine the values that you hold dear in your heart. Perhaps those are the values of your family: truth, righteousness, compassion, love, holiness. Now look at this in terms of a pie graph and a reflection of who you really are. Put those different values in a pie graph. Now, construct a budget of your spending. Now take out things like your taxes and the basic needs to live, which we all need. Obviously, food is an expense we all need. Now take a look at the discretionary funding that you have and create a similar pie graph to see how that money is spent. You know, we say in life that we put our money where our mouth is. But really, does our spending, the things that we invest in, reflect the values that we profess always? Or are sometimes the values that we profess have nothing to do with the way we spend our money, the way we invest ourselves in life? Does this thought experiment cause us to consider what are the values that we are really working for in our lives? As we know, budgets are not just about money, but they're about values management, how we use our money, what are the most important things that we are doing with our money. 2 weeks ago, we had a command. God says to Vasuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham, build me a tabernacle and I will dwell among you. The idea was to create a place for God in this world. People were supposed to come. They weren't taxed. They were supposed to come and give of their heart. Kol yidvenu libo. Anyone whose heart's moving them. They were giving gold, silver, copper, fine wool, all types of valuable things. Now, what was the tabernacle about? It's the very center of the community. It's the center value of the community. According to Nachmanides, the Ramban, actually the tabernacle in the desert is the continuation of the Sinai experience. To build a tabernacle and put it in the middle of the camp is to say to everyone, these are our orienting values by which we live. In fact, we learn later in the Torah that the people gave so much to this project that Moses said enough. That never happened in any federation campaign, I can tell you. However, there is a temptation here. If the tabernacle was to replace the Sinai experience and put it in the middle of the camp always, therefore think about this, the claims of Har Sinai, the claims of Mount Sinai are also being put in the middle of the camp. It's very easy to say, Na'aseh v'nishma, the Jewish people accepted the Torah and said, we will do and we will listen. It's much harder to live that. To put the tabernacle in the middle of the camp becomes a constant reminder of our aspirational goals to be holy, because ultimately God's in the camp and God is holy. That can be overwhelming for many people. There's always an attempt, either consciously or sometimes subconsciously, to supplant these values with our more immediate desires, often ego-centered desires, and sometimes even motivated by baser instincts. Now, as I said, sometimes that's clear as day, but often these are subconscious aspects at play. We say one thing, we believe in one thing, but we actually live our lives and we invest in other ways. Many people asked, how could the Jewish people worship the golden calf right after Mount Sinai? I ask you, is it really that difficult to understand? Think at that moment of Sinai, the number of moral and religious obligations that were placed upon us. Isn't it easier to just fashion an idol of our own making and say, you know what, this is what took us out of the land of Egypt? That's exactly what they did. How does this story begin? The story of the golden calf begins when Moses doesn't come down from Mount Sinai, and the throngs of people are beginning to donate. But what are they donating? Gold to the calf, but not any type of gold. The Torah says the gold earrings that were on their ears. The Malbim, one of the 19th century commentaries, says something very interesting. What does it have to do with about the ears? Why golden earrings? Because it's the same ears that heard the words at Mount Sinai, and that the people said Na'aseh v'nishma, that we will do. Those same ears now are going ahead and they're giving their earrings, golden earrings, to the golden calf. In essence, what's going on here is they want to supplant the golden calf. They want to supplant the tabernacle with the golden calf. Now, what were the claims of this golden calf upon them? Nothing. The golden calf claimed nothing from them. Listen to this description. Early the next day, the people offered up burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. They sat down to eat and drink like a gluttonous feast, and then rose to play. The words at the end, Vayukumu l'sachek, they rose up to play. Rashi says that there's a sexual item here. In essence, they did not want to be responsible to anyone other than their own desires at that moment. And these are the values that they placed in the middle of the camp. What is the connection between the sin of the golden calf and every subsequent sin? Think about it. Every sin partakes for a moment when we supplant the values of Sinai in our heart with other values. Consider our society. We have a dollar bill. On the dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." On the dollar bill of all places. If so, every time we use that piece of money, it should be used for holy purposes. We should be investing it for our higher aspirational values. Now, let's be honest. In our society or economy, the dollar, is it motivated by the value that we have written on that piece of paper, "In God we trust"? We all accept the idea that we are carriers of the Torah. Are we always living our lives according to those values? Or do we profess it on sometimes, but we are actually living our lives in a different way? Is it that difficult to understand why the people in the desert supplanted Sinai with the golden calf? So if we see idolatry in this light, creating a temple and worshiping other goals, is that really difficult to understand in our own lives? What does it mean to be a Jew? It's not a right. It's an aspirational vision of who we are supposed to be. We never reach that value. And that's difficult because we actually need to constantly deepen our identification with those values and be on guard, because there are other values in our hearts that are at play, that are motivated by our own specific ego needs. I'm wishing all of you a Shabbat Shalom.